host, Stacy Washington.
Love is everlasting, love is.
No, it's classified and we can't tell you anything. All I can tell you is the FBI director has no credibility.
That was Congresswoman Maxine Waters criticizing now former FBI Director James Comey after a closed briefing on Russia's interference in the U.S. election. It took place just 1 week before the president took office here at the White House. For more, I want to bring in the Congresswoman herself, Maxine Waters, who is joining me now. Congresswoman, we appreciate your time. You obviously have been very critical of James Comey in the past. You said that he had no credibility. I assume that you support the president's decision then to fire his FBI director.
No, I do not necessarily support the president's decision. If the president had not gone all over the country praising him about the way he handled Hillary and the emails, if the president said he had confidence in him, if the president had not said he was a part of his team.
But Congresswoman, yes. I understand that in the past he was praising him, but if you said that FBI Director James Comey had no credibility, wouldn't you support the fact that the president, then candidate Trump, now President Trump made the decision to get rid of him?
No, not necessarily. And let me tell you why. Not?
Welcome to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk, everybody. Oh, yeah. We're starting off the show coming in hot, burning down everything nearby with the rancid excuse-making of Maxine Waters. Yes, that's what you just heard. First, at the very beginning of the clip is her standing behind a microphone stand and telling all of the reporters present that she's just been briefed by FBI Director Comey and that he has no credibility. Fast forward to now, where she's actually angry that President Trump exercised his right as the commander-in-chief to let Comey go. So the further into this we get, the more we learn about the operational deficits of the Democrats. But before we get too far into that, what's on the show today? You're probably wondering. It's Thursday, and we got a full show. We have Stephen Gutowski, who is a good friend to me. Met him at the NRA convention, and he writes for the Free Beacon. He's a staff writer there. And we had one of those big writer, editor, radio people dinners, and it was a really good time, and it was really nice to get to know him a little bit. Aside from all of the times I've read his articles, he's a fantastic writer. He's going to come on and talk to us about news of the day, the Comey firing, etc. And then we have the weekly wrap, which I have a rundown for you, just a bunch of different stories that we can kind of look at. And it's a bit early for the weekly wrap. It's Thursday, so should I call it the weekly wrap if it's on a Thursday? I don't know, but I found news items, and I thought we could rapid fire go through those. So that's the show for today. And then I'm on Fox Business in the hour directly after the show is over. So if you're on your televisions at that point, tune in and you'll get to see me on there talking about something. Not sure what. Probably update that later. And then we have other things. So check my Twitter feed at Stacy on the Right and stacyontheright.com to keep up with what's going on. So here we are. We hear Maxine Waters, first the audio of her saying that Director Comey has zero credibility, and then she turns and stalks away so she can't answer any questions. And she said during the audio clip, she said, it's all classified, so I can't tell you much about it, but he has no credibility. That's a pretty strong statement to make when you can't support it because everything you heard is classified. So you would almost think, why did she go up to the microphone stand at all? But she did. That's what she said. Now, this reporter does a really good job of holding her feet to the fire on the question that he's asking, which is, why aren't you in agreement with this action since you said he has no credibility? Let's listen to her explain why she can't support Donald Trump on firing someone that she's already said has no credibility. It's cut 4.
You have an investigation going on where the president is implicated, and this is a serious investigation. I've been trying to get people to focus on this connection with the Kremlin and with Putin. I have a resolution that I introduced in February. I think there's enough there that we know about the Kremlin and about Putin to be concerned about whether or not there was collusion.
So to be clear, you think,
I believe that they should have to connect the dots and get the facts, because I think it will lead to the impeachment of this president.
So, Congresswoman, respecting that, to be clear, you believe it would have been better to keep in place an FBI director who you said had no credibility to oversee this investigation than to find someone who you think would be a better choice?
No, but I believe the president thought that. Don't forget, you're talking about what some Democrats said, what I said, but don't forget, he was the president. The president supported him. He had confidence in him. It was within his power. And
but you said he had no credibility, so it would seem to make sense that he should get rid of him.
No.
So she's telling us what she thinks President Obama thinks, or I'm sorry, President Trump. She's telling us what she thinks President Trump thinks. Now, it's interesting because I don't actually know what President Trump thinks. And I'm on a number of email lists and I receive updates, and I'm just trying to ponder how in the world she would know better than anyone else, because none of us are inside of his head. Of course, he said he supported the FBI director. Of course, he's going to try to sew together his cabinet and bring all of the elements of his administration into one cohesive team. Of course, he's going to make statements to assure everyone that he's not going to go on a firing spree as soon as he becomes the president and in his early days. But now it's actually a perfect time for him to take this step, the step that he's taken, which is letting him go. But why? Everyone seems to be dancing around the true reasons why President Trump let FBI Director Comey go. He did so at the recommendation of Attorney General Sessions and Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein. So Rod Rosenstein wrote this in-depth, detailed letter dated May 9th that he submitted to his boss, the Attorney General. It's a memorandum for him. The subject is restoring public confidence in the FBI. And let's just go ahead and reset this entire discussion. We are talking about an organization that is tasked with investigating crime and prosecuting offenders, recommending prosecution of offenders to the Department of Justice, and it's been politicized. Maybe FBI Director Comey never intended to politicize it, but he made a number of substantial errors, which this is the reason why he had to be let go. So you can say that you thought President Trump felt this, you thought President Trump felt that. You can say anything you'd like, but what most people go by is what the person who's actually doing the action, in this case it's President Trump, he's firing FBI Director Comey, what he's saying is the reasoning behind his doing so. And I think any person in a position of authority, especially the commander-in-chief, would read this letter from Rosenstein and would give serious consideration to the recommendation, which is that FBI Director Comey can no longer effectively perform his duties. He goes through a number of different things, but we have time, so I'm going to share with you the highlights. And I already tweeted this letter out earlier, a couple of hours ago. So if you want to read it for yourself, and I recommend you do, because it arms you with enough facts to effectively shut down any Democrat who's operating straight out of their emotions right now, under the assumption that the only thing that matters is that Russia and Donald Trump is an orange, Cheeto, and Russia is evil and they're full of oligarchs and they hate America. And somehow FBI Director Comey was acting on behalf of the American people to protect us all from that by somehow being someone that the Democrats hated up until just Tuesday. Does that make sense to you? No. So let's go into this right now. So I told you the subject of the letter is restoring public confidence in the FBI, and the impact of removing a leader of an organization is that you effectively reset the tone and conversation because the incoming leader sets that. That's their job. So the Federal Bureau of Investigation is the premier federal investigative agency of the United States. And Rosenstein posits that the FBI's reputation and credibility have suffered substantial damage, and that this affects the entire Department of Justice. So there's department employees, veterans, legislators, citizens, all coming forward, all saying behind closed doors that they don't trust the FBI anymore. It's been damaged, and that substantial action needs to be taken in order to rectify that. So he compliments the at the time current FBI Director Comey and says that he deserves appreciation for his public service, but he doesn't understand Comey's refusal to accept the near universal judgment that he was mistaken in his handling of the conclusion of the investigation of Secretary Clinton's emails. In other words, recommending no prosecution when clearly there was a reason to prosecute her and intent was present. So the director also usurped the Attorney General's authority on July 5th of 2016, announcing the conclusion and that the case should be closed without prosecution. He says this is not the function of the director of the FBI. At most, the director should have said the FBI completed the investigation and presented its findings to federal prosecutors. Now, Comey defends his decision by asserting that he believed Attorney General Loretta Lynch had a conflict because she met with Bill Clinton on the tarmac and they discussed grandkids, of which she has none, by the way. There's a well-established process for other officials to step in when a conflict requires the recusal of the Attorney General. So, on July 5th, and this is Rosenstein, he's saying, however, the director announced his own conclusions about the nation's most sensitive criminal investigation without the authorization of duly appointed Justice Department leaders. So here's where he starts to go afoul of what he can do as FBI director. It's not an all-powerful role. It doesn't encompass all of the other agencies. He's not over the Department of Justice in his role as FBI director. Rosenstein goes on to say, compounding the error, the director ignored another long-standing principle. We do not hold press conferences to release derogatory information about the subject of a declined criminal investigation. Derogatory information sometimes is disclosed in the course of criminal investigations and prosecutions, but we never release it gratuitously. The director laid out his version of the facts for the news media as if it were a closing argument, but without a trial, and it is a textbook example of what federal prosecutors and agents are taught not to do. So he's broken protocol. He's embarrassed his colleagues, and he's outside of the bounds of the jurisdiction of his office. Pretty egregious. And we're talking about government here, so these protocols and these strictures are very, very set for a reason. In order for people to do their jobs effectively, they have to operate within them. When he goes outside of these bounds, it makes it difficult for other people to do their jobs, and it erodes the trust that is inherently supposed to be a part, a facet of the FBI. It's supposed to infer, this respect, and it no longer does. So he goes really, he deeply enumerates, he elucidates entirely what all of the transgressions were. He doesn't mince words. He truly expounds upon it in a way that makes it clear that these are egregious errors on the behalf of FBI Director Comey. He discusses a concept of sua sponte. So in this next paragraph, he says that FBI Director Comey defended his remarks by saying the goal was to say what is true. What did we do? What did we find? What did we think about it? But the goal of a federal criminal investigation is not to announce our thoughts to a press conference. The goal is to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to justify federal criminal prosecution and then allow a federal prosecutor who exercises authority delegated by the Attorney General to make a prosecutorial decision, and then, if prosecution is warranted, let the judge and jury determine the facts. We sometimes release information about closed investigations in appropriate ways, but the FBI does not do it sua sponte. So that was my first time seeing sua sponte. I'm not a lawyer. But I did look it up. Thank God for the fantasticness of your, you highlight it, click. And its short definition is self-initiated by a court without an external request from anyone. So the FBI does not provide information about closed investigations self-initiated. They don't do it on their own. But that is exactly what FBI Director Comey did. Then he goes on to describe the problems with the letter to Congress dated October 28th in 2016, and the director's choice to use the words speak and conceal, it referring to his choice about the newly discovered email messages. Conceal, and I'm back on the letter now, conceal is a loaded term that misstates the issue. When federal agents and prosecutors quietly open a criminal investigation, they're not concealing anything. We are simply following a long-standing policy that we refrain from publicizing non-public information. In that context, silence is not concealment. And so in many ways, this letter, and I'm off the letter now, I'm speaking off the cuff, is every paragraph is a hammer on an enormous nail, the last nail in the coffin of FBI Director Comey's career at the Federal Bureau of Investigations. You have to read it for yourself to understand how damning the evidence is against him and how appropriate this action was in light of what they're trying to do, which is restore trust in that agency.
5 seconds.
We'll be back with Stephen Gutowski. Stay there.
The Awakening on Urban Family Talk.
You know, a bunch of people thought Obama was the Messiah. There are a lot of people who are kind of treating Trump like that.
Bishop E.W. Jackson.
Folks, I'm not looking for a Messiah. I've already got one. His name is Jesus, the Son of the living God. We put our ultimate trust in him. All other human beings are fallible.
The Awakening, weekday mornings at 9 Central on Urban Family Talk. Just as David's mighty man Benaiah chased down a lion into a pit on a snowy day, Lion Chasers champions uncommon men and women of faith who are unafraid to stand up and speak truth to power in these dark and evil days. Never before has there been such a need for people of faith to draw a line in the sand with the sword of truth. Lion Chasers, the intersection of faith and public policy with Lonnie Poindexter. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. John Grisham's runaway bestseller, The Firm, is about a young lawyer who gets his dream job at a prestigious law firm, and along with it, a beautiful house and an upscale car and plenty of perks. Let the good times roll. But then he discovers that the firm is not what it appears to be. It's corrupt to the core. He's in danger of trading his character for comfort. You see, what he wanted almost destroyed him. Sometimes we are so driven by desire we don't realize that what we want can destroy us. If we keep badgering God, sometimes he gives us what we ask for. We need to be careful we don't become so stubborn and hard-headed that we pursue things beyond the boundaries of what God really wants for our lives. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 18 through 22 is a graphic illustration of this principle. Then you will cry out in that day because of your king whom you have chosen for yourselves. For the Lord will not answer you in that day. Nevertheless, the people refused to listen to the voice of Samuel. And they said, No, but there shall be a king over us, that we also shall be like all the nations, that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. Now after Samuel had heard all the words of the people, he repeated them in the Lord's hearing. And the Lord said to Samuel, Listen to their voice and appoint them a king. So God gave them what they asked for. And if you know anything about the life of Saul, boy, did they ever get a doozy. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. Let's think about what we're asking for and why we want it. Let the honor and glory of God direct our prayer requests.
Legacy Moment with Crawford Loritz is produced by Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Global Ministries.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Urban Family Talk. Stacy on the Right, at Stacy on the Right on Twitter and Instagram. Find my article over at The Federalist, which is about Apple throttling their phones. And no, I'm not against capitalism. Yes, I'm for good products. That's kind of funny that somebody actually accused me of that in the comments. And then I also have a piece up at America's First Freedom about all of the Post-Dispatch dust up and all that good jazz. And so you can find those two things in my Twitter feed. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome staff writer for the Washington Free Beacon, one of my favorite websites that I actually go to a minimum of 3 times a day. It's that good. Stephen Gutowski. Stephen, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm on your website a lot. Tell your friends over there at your place that that's what I do.
Oh, I will. We're now an award-winning website, too. The Heritage Foundation just gave us a very prestigious award, so I think from now on everyone will have to refer to us that way. Award-winning Kate Upton, warmongering blog, I think is the appropriate title.
Wait, okay. Staff writer for the award-winning Kate Upton blog of Washington Free Beacon. Is that what you want? That doesn't sound that good.
I think it's pretty good.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go with your recommendation.
Make sure we cover all the bases.
Sure. So let's talk about the news that's burning up all of the Democrats' shorts. They're just out of control. And it's Comey getting fired, which, remember, they wanted that up until Tuesday, and now they don't want it.
Yeah. There's been a lot of switching places on Comey over the last few days here. From all across the political spectrum, I think, but certainly from Democrats as well, who wanted him fired in October, and obviously now they want to appoint an independent prosecutor to look into his firing here in just a few months' time later. So there's a bit of whiplash there.
Well, so speaking of whiplash, we've got the issue. The bigger issue is that in the letter that Rod Rosenstein wrote, and I was just going over a little bit of it in the first segment, he actually asserts that FBI Director Comey went outside of the bounds of what is normal operational activity for an FBI director by kind of acting as if he was a member of the Department of Justice, and kind of he was kind of like straddling the agencies and acting in ways that defy protocol.
Yeah, this is something that certainly conservative critics have pointed out about Comey throughout the entire investigation into, Hillary's mishandling of classified information. A lot of people believe that, the FBI should have charged her, and that Comey prevented that, despite the evidence that she did, in fact, share classified information in a way that's not, allowed. And his argument was always, I guess, that she didn't intend to do this. There wasn't a criminal intent, but I think a lot of people say that the statute doesn't require that, and so his decision not to charge her is sort of prevents the AG from deciding whether or not they want to prosecute a case against her.
Right. And I agree. I think there's a lot of problems they're surrounding his actions, and I think the appropriate response was to wait until after the first 100 days that we're past that heavy scrutiny and we're into trying to be more normal in the operations of the Trump administration and get this thing done. But I want to pivot over because I'm actually under your author profile over at the award-winning freebeacon.com website. And I just pulled up this piece that you just wrote. This is your latest piece, and it talks about gun groups reacting positively to the new Trump judicial nominations. And I hadn't actually considered that the new nominations would be favorable to the Second Amendment, but Donald Trump did promise that at the NRA annual meetings, didn't he?
Yes, that's right. He did. He made a lot of very strong promises to the crowd during the annual meeting. And, I think that the gun rights movement generally has been very happy with how he's performed as president so far. And this, him coming out this weekend and announcing 10 new nominees for the judicial, or, for the federal bench, has also pleased, all the major gun groups. I got the NRA essentially said he's fulfilling his promises. The Second Amendment Foundation, which is another pro-gun group that files a lot of federal court cases, they're also very happy with the slate of nominees. So, and obviously this comes after Neil Gorsuch being appointed to the Supreme Court, which a lot of the gun community was extremely happy about as well. So, it's just something that happened that I think makes the gun community, happy with how this president is handling things so far.
So you also talk about in the piece, you're talking about the fact that there are over 120 federal court vacancies waiting to be filled, and I think that's something that, so we don't have like a federal court vacancies watch on, 60 Minutes. Once a week we get an update. How many vacancies are left? How many leftists are, we don't even have any clue of how many of these vacancies exist. Do you feel like he's going to be able to fill these 120 federal court vacancies with any speed and efficiency, or is this going to be something that the Democrats will be effective in blocking him on?
Well, that's a really good question. Certainly, it's something that doesn't get a lot of attention, or as much attention as a lot of things that we see on a daily basis with the Trump administration. But it is one of the most important things that he can do because, of course, these federal judge appointments are for life. So it's an impact, just like the Supreme Court, that's going to far outlast the 4 to 8 years that Donald Trump is going to be president. But of course, the Democrats are not going to be particularly willing to work with him on that, I think. And we've seen a lot of slowdowns, both caused by Democrats and then, just generally from the administration moving somewhat slowly on new appointments. So, it'll be interesting to watch to see how many of those 120 he's going to fill, and then how many are going to be justices or judges that people on the right conservative movement are going to be happy with.
You know what? That's some audio that we need on this show. How am I going to get to be introduced, Stephen? Because we need to pivot now and let's talk about this award-winning thing that you've got going on, because it's sitting well with me. I'm not jealous or anything, but I'm wondering, where's my slice of this distribution of awards? Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right, the award-winning radio program, blah, 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 for whatever. I don't know what award they're going to give me. But I feel like this, now that you've exposed this to me, that the Free Beacon, which it does, your place does great work. I can't knock it. But my show does we do good work too. So I need an award-winning designation of some sort. This sounds like some kind of a confab or a meeting that has to happen in D.C.
That's right. I agree with you. We need to be able to put award-winning right next to the intro of the show.
I agree.
I think that would be ideal.
I concur. But the judicial watch thing, that is something that we should actually kind of try to keep track of, because, I agree with you that the Democrats seem to be really efficient at slowing down the momentum of the Trump administration to get things done. They, even when they're not in power, they seem to be able to, gum up the works. So we do need to have these positions filled by a conservative president, or, some people say Trump's not conservative, but I'm referring to the fact that he's run on the Republican side. And we're hoping that the recommendations for this list that he's using, that all of the most conservative organizations are the ones who help compile the list. But we do need, I'm not even sure if there's a place online where you can track, how many federal court vacancies are waiting to be filled.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Mostly for that kind of information, the Second Amendment Foundation and the NRA, at least when it comes to gun rights and the courts, tend to be the best source on these kinds of things. As far as, the Second Amendment Foundation has a whole initiative that they've set up to monitor appointments, so they'd be a good source in the future to see how that's really going. Usually these kind of appointments are made in groups like this, or nominations. Then you have to wait for the oversight hearings to take place to see how many of these people are going to get pushed through. But honestly, Democrats under Harry Reid, as we all remember, made this process easier for the majority. So it doesn't take 60 votes to get a federal judge through anymore, and now not even a Supreme Court justice. So certainly it will probably move faster than it has in recent history. And I think there's probably a better chance than there has been previously for most of these appointments to actually get made.
Well, it's a serious thing, because these judges are the same ones that we're seeing just popping up out of nowhere like moles. And, you can't do that, President Trump. We're going to put a stay on that. The judicial, the circuit court system, where the appellate courts are the ones that are gummed up with these kind of leftist nincompoops, and they're just making everything really difficult for the president. And I find it interesting that even with Attorney General Sessions at the DOJ, they don't seem to have anyone who can give them advice on how to get around it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's certainly something that has been prominent in the early years of the Trump administration, these fights with the federal courts. And obviously, if the Trump administration is the one appointing the judges, they're less likely to run into problems with a lot of them, especially ones that, you know, people from the outside commentators will say are politically motivated rulings. So that's certainly something in the, down the line, years and years from now, you could see the effects of that for sure.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so I mean, I could keep talking to you for just hours and hours, but my show is only 1 hour long, and it's not yet award-winning where your workplace is. So I will defer to that and request that you return to bring more of your award-winning commentary to our program at some future date, not too far in the future.
Absolutely. Well, I think the formula is if you have me on as much as possible, then the awards will start coming in. Right?
Oh, is that how it works? Oh, this is fantastic. Finally, someone tells me the secret to winning the awards. Well, you know what? I'm going to forward this suggestion on to Demetrius, who books the guests, and we will make sure that the regularity with which you appear will begin to gin up the needed, momentum to get the awards funneling down to the Stacy on the Right show.
There you go.
Thanks for coming on, Stephen. I really appreciate it. And you're staff writer for the Washington Free Beacon, the award-winning Washington Free Beacon. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
All right. So that was Stephen Gutowski. And actually, he and I are following each other on Twitter. I'm going to tweet him. And you guys can go to my Twitter feed at Stacy on the Right and see the tweet that I'm going to send to Stephen. And so right now we have just a little bit more time to cover a couple of things. And so I want to go over this report that apparently, and remember, this is according to David Rutz, and this is actually from the Free Beacon as well. I told you I'm on there a lot. He's writing about FBI Director James Comey privately calling President Trump crazy and outside of the realm of normal for his March accusation that President Obama wiretapped him. So this is kind of like a little bit of back channel, and you guys know how much I enjoy that. With obviously a grain of salt. In an article outlining the growing tensions that led to Comey's surprising dismissal by Trump on Tuesday, the New York Times called the firing a long time coming. And so they go into this report that was in the New York Times, and they talk about Mr. Trump fuming when Mr. Comey publicly dismissed the sensational wiretapping claim. And I think that was also unprofessional on the part of Comey. It's like he just really likes being in front of the camera, and he got a little bit too much of a taste of it, and now he can't seem to stop making comments that get him right back out in front of the camera, which I feel is part of the reason why they felt like he had politicized everything. So this collision between president and FBI director that culminated with Mr. Comey's stunning dismissal, which I don't actually find it that stunning, but I go on Tuesday, had been a long time coming. To a president obsessed with loyalty, Mr. Comey was a rogue operator who could not be trusted as the FBI investigated Russian ties to Mr. Trump's campaign. To a lawman obsessed with independence, Mr. Trump was the ultimate loose cannon, making irresponsible claims on Twitter and jeopardizing the Bureau's credibility. I would posit that the person jeopardizing the credibility of the FBI was more often than not FBI Director Comey. But, so it goes on, this report. It says the White House, in a series of shifting and contradictory accounts, first said Mr. Trump decided to fire Mr. Comey because the Attorney General and his deputy recommended it. By Wednesday, it had amended the timeline to say that the president had actually been thinking about getting rid of FBI Director as far back as November after he won the election, and then became strongly inclined after Mr. Comey testified before Congress last week. Again, I understand that this is a report, quote unquote, from the New York Times, woo, awesome. But I tend to go with what the deputy attorney general and the attorney general had in their communications and the documents surrounding this event. I don't know where this report comes from. I'm not accusing it of being unsubstantiated. Obviously, it must have had some credence. They placed it in the New York Times. But remember, newsrooms around the country have a certain bent, and it's against Donald Trump. So they want to shift culpability from Director Comey to anything else. And a good place for it to land is on President Trump. I'm not going to just accept that whole cloth without digging some more. When we get back, we'll have more for you. Stay right there.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's Uncommon Moment.
Whether it's Y2K or 2012, it seems people have been predicting the end of the world on a fairly regular basis these days. I don't know when it's coming, and neither do you. What I do know, however, is that God says we're to stay prepared, spiritually ready for that moment of Christ's return or the moment when our lives on earth end. None of us are promised tomorrow. Don't put off asking Christ into your life until then. The gift of eternal life is available to each of us as a free gift. Have you accepted it by asking Christ into your life?
New York Times best-selling author Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
My name's Sean. I remember stumbling up the stairs higher than a kite. I could hear my little girl tell her mom that the monster was back. I was finally ready for a change. I came to Teen Challenge, and I walked into a new life.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
Hello, it's your girl, Victory McIntosh. Catch me Monday through Fridays from 6 to 8 p.m. Central for the Jesus Jams, where I'm all about putting a good beat to some good gospel music. I'm here to inform you of today's hottest topics, along with many of my favorite jams. The Jesus Jams is a place for truth, wisdom, and empowerment with good music. Catch me Monday through Fridays, 6 to 8 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
Lately, I've been really feeling the press to be greater than what I am. It doesn't have anything to do with my job or vocation, but it has everything to do with using what God has given me for the building up of the kingdom. I am reminded of Habakkuk chapter 2, verses 2 and 3. Write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. Have you got a vision? Write it down and make it plain. Set goals for the vision and stick with those goals. Now, I may be preaching to the choir, but it's a great reminder to myself as well to stay on course. You can accomplish anything with God at the front and a well thought out plan. In the next few days, purpose in your heart to write your vision and make it plain. Who knows who will have an opportunity to read it and run. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Trump's decision to fire FBI Director James Comey stunned Washington and is sending shockwaves through the agency.
Tuesday night massacre. Mr. Harbaugh.
It's a grotesque abuse of power by the President of the United States.
Again, disdain for the presidency. This is bigger than Trump. It's about America.
People are calling it a constitutional crisis.
We're in a full-blown constitutional crisis.
An absolutely bizarre statement for this bizarre president to make.
And Donald Trump, in writing that sentence that he clearly couldn't hold back on, is raising his own potential criminal liability.
A little whiff of fascism tonight, I think it's fair to say. I don't care about the law. I'm the boss.
It's understandable that people are comparing it to Watergate.
This is the kind of thing that goes on in non-democracies.
This is a terribly dangerous moment in American history.
Has there ever been anything that rose to this level other than the Saturday Night Massacre in the time that you've been an observer of American politics?
I can't think of it.
I've heard some people call this a dark day for our democracy.
This is no longer about Donald Trump. It's about the presidency, which is being diminished on a daily basis.
The Capitol is filling with echoes of Watergate.
And the question this morning is whether the centuries-old system of checks and balances will swing into action.
Wow. Echoes of Watergate. You would think that something so momentous and so unexpected and so crazy had occurred, when in reality, it's just a regular day. More reorganizing of the cabinet. More change in what is a changeable time because it's a new administration. And anyone who listened to the Democrats a few months ago, even up until this week, has heard them say repetitively on every single avenue, and they've written about it repetitively, that they want to see Comey gone. They didn't think he had any credibility left. They didn't want to see him stay on. I'm not sure in what other way we could behave other than to see him let go. So it's just much ado about nothing. I really believe that. So here we are. And I said we would do like the weekly wrap now, which we should also maybe still do it tomorrow. So we'll see. But there were a number of just news blurbs that I thought were really, really important. And one of them is subpoenas are flying. Senate Intelligence Committee has subpoenaed President Trump's former national security advisor. And they want to bring him before the Senate Intelligence Committee to discuss documents linked to the investigation into Russia's attempt to meddle with the 2016 presidential election. This is a statement issued by Senator Richard Burr, Republican from North Carolina, and Senator Mark Warner, Democrat from Virginia, saying that the committee tried to get the documents from Flynn last month, but his lawyer rejected the request. The committee decided to issue a subpoena. There are several ongoing investigations surrounding Russia, possibly colluding with the Trump campaign. Flynn was forced out of his position after it was revealed that he discussed sanctions with the Russian ambassador to the U.S. before the inauguration. So that's an interesting tidbit. And what the Democrats want to do is connect this Senate Intelligence Committee subpoena of Michael Flynn to the fact that FBI Director Comey was let go. But where has FBI Director Comey been fired to? Zimbabwe, North Korea, someplace he can't be reached? No, he'll still be subject to subpoena here in the United States. Just because he's not the FBI director anymore doesn't mean they can't get him in to talk to him if they need to and put him under oath. They can absolutely still do that. So Donald Trump, the president, has signed an executive order today establishing a commission on voter fraud. And this bipartisan commission will investigate improper voting, fraudulent voter registrations, and fraudulent voting. Trump has repeatedly claimed that millions of people voted illegally in the last election. And although such allegations are unsubstantiated by regular media channels, we all know True the Vote exists, and we all know there has been voter fraud. We also know that illegal immigrants have voted. So it's absolutely appropriate for the president to do this. President Trump promised he would establish a committee to investigate shortly after taking office. Vice President Mike Pence will reportedly be the chair, and Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach will be the vice chair. Fantastic. The goodbye letter from Comey. That's another news item that's kind of, it's on the radar but under. In his goodbye letter, Comey said he wouldn't dwell on the firing. He sent a letter to friends and agents on Wednesday stating that he has long believed a president can fire the FBI director for any reason or for no reason at all, and that's why he won't spend time on the decision or the way it was executed, and I hope you won't either. Comey found out he was no longer the director of the FBI while addressing bureau employees in Los Angeles on Tuesday. He said his hope is that the agents will continue to live out our values and the mission of protecting the American people and upholding the Constitution, and he reminded them of something he told them before. Quote, in times of turbulence, the American people should see the FBI as a rock of competence, honesty, and independence. What makes leaving the FBI hard is the nature and quality of its people who together make it that rock for America. I think it's a nice sentiment for him to say that in his letter, but I disagree that the FBI is the rock of the American people. The rock of some American people, and hopefully more American people, is Jesus Christ. So we should be relying on our Father in heaven through prayer and good living, right living, trying and striving to live according to God's precepts, what he's laid out for us in the Bible. That's what we should be trying to live according to. And while I I certainly desire that the FBI would be competent, honest, and independent. I can't rely on an organization that's chock full of people to be a perfect example of those traits. They're honorable traits. They're definitely things to strive for, but we're not going to find those things in people. So, it's an interesting statement that he made in his letter. And then the last item is Aetna announcing a pullout from their last 2 Obamacare markets. And we actually have some time now here at the end of the show. If you want to call in and weigh in on any of the interviews or anything that you've heard from today or any other part of the week, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. And don't forget to take the poll at urbanfamilytalk.com. Aetna announces a pullout from their last 2 Obamacare markets. So this is the complete obliteration of this idea that we shouldn't repeal Obamacare. It's just another nail in the coffin. You can't sit up and honestly say that exchanges that contain no insurance companies are a viable option going forward into the future. Now you have tons of states full of Americans who don't have any actual health insurers on the exchanges that they're paying premiums into. So what are they paying for? They don't have access to any physicians through these exchanges because there are no health insurers in the exchanges. Some of the exchanges have collapsed. Some of them are close to collapse. And this announcement, Aetna made this announcement yesterday that they're going to stop offering Obamacare health insurance coverage next year in Delaware and Nebraska, the only 2 states left that they were still participating in the Affordable Care Act's individual insurance market. That basically shuts the door. Aetna is no longer participating in Obamacare. Why? Well, we know why. Because it's not working well. The cost model doesn't work for this company. And so rather than just hang on for dear life and run their company into the ground, they're opting to leave this, dead fish where it is. They're not going to try to resurrect it. They're not going to attach those little paddles to it and shock it. They're just done. They're out. They're letting it go. Aetna had already announced it was pulling out of Virginia and Iowa after exiting several other states in 2016. Rival insurers Humana and United Health Group have also dropped out of most of the government-subsidized individual health exchanges. House Republicans voted last week to repeal and replace key elements of Obamacare, although the measure faces tougher opposition in the Senate. Well, if they keep holding out, there won't be anything left but a carcass of Obamacare. They still need to repeal the rules and regulations because you don't want to leave them in place for a future Democrat president to resurrect. But, what exactly are they going to pick the meat off of? Even the bones will have disintegrated by the time they get around to repealing it. They've got to do something about getting rid of Obamacare and instituting the healthcare reforms that Americans were promised. I'm so tired of hearing repeal and replace. So, there it is. There's the meat of it. So, on top of all of that, the White House is now coming out and saying, pivoting back to Comey, that Donald Trump, President Trump, actually soured on FBI Director Comey quite a bit ago. You know what? And I get that. And that's fantastic. But what I really want to talk about right now in this last few minutes of the show is this whole deal with Bethune-Cookman. So you might have seen this story. And there's 2 stories here. There's, first of all, the black students at Harvard have now instituted a separate graduation for the black kids. So these students who are graduating with bachelor's degrees from Harvard and master's, they're going to separate themselves off and have a black graduation as they've done at Temple University and Stanford and Columbia. All Ivy League stuff here. We're talking about the toughest places to go in and get an education. And they're doing it because they say they've had a tough time. It's been really difficult for them to get their degrees. And so they want to commemorate that by being around people like themselves and creating a network, which, I'm wondering, you've been at Harvard for 4 years or 6 years or 8 years and you haven't created a network by then? Not only that, but what happens when you have this black graduation? All the white students who are in the same class that you're in, graduating in the same year, they're having basically a white graduation, or everybody but black people graduation. And then they are going to go out and obviously they graduate together. They're going to network together. And So how do you interface with people who know going in that if you graduated in 2017 and you're black, you were a part of the Harvard all black graduation thing? What if they don't want to do business with you because you didn't want to walk across the same stage they walked across and listen to the same commencement speech that they listened to? This has negative and deleterious impacts going forward into the future for people who are participating in this. And I think it's really short-sighted, and they're not thinking this thing through. One of the offshoots, one of the side benefits that many people go to college to access is the network of individuals who attend the same college that you attend, who at later points can become sources for capital, business opportunities, jobs, references for promotions, you name it. That's part of the reason people are recommended to attend college, because you meet all of the best people there, they say, quote unquote. Now, I don't believe that's necessarily true for everyone. So everyone's not meant to go to college. And for those who aren't meant to go to college, there is a network out there for those individuals in the career paths that they choose. But why would you go to the trouble of paying all of that money to get a degree from Harvard, go to the trouble of all of the work and sacrifice you had to make to operate at that level for that number of years to satisfy all of the graduation requirements, only to shoot yourself in the foot at the very end of the process by shunning the majority of your class? Because I guarantee you the black students at Harvard are not the majority. They're a small minority of students. So all of the other students are going to be in the same graduation together. They have that memory together. They're going to be going forward, sharing that experience. And the black students have an experience with a tiny group of people who may be able to offer them opportunities in the future, but not nearly the same number and the same breadth and impact as the larger group. I've heard people say in moms groups and different things like that, they talk about the different schools that their husbands went to or that they went to. I went to this school, I went to that school. And they talk about how later they were able to utilize their graduation from there on LinkedIn or someplace else to ask, hey, I graduated in this year. What year were you? And that opens the conversation. Oh, you're a graduate from, in this case, Harvard. Oh, so am I. I was this year. What can I do for you? It's an instant form of recognition. We're in the same club. We both went to Harvard. It's a tiny club. It's an elite group of people who actually go to Harvard. And so instead of thanking God, oh my goodness, not only did I get accepted to Harvard, not only did I attend Harvard, not only am I graduating, but now I'm a part of this elite group of people who have graduated from this institution, and I'm going to get to go out in the world and, at least for the first 5 or 6 years, me throwing down my resume with Harvard University grad on it is going to open some doors for me. Because there are companies in New York City, when you apply for a tech job or something, any kind of job, they say Big Ten or Ivy League grads need only apply. So if you went to a regular college or a good, well-respected college, but it's not a Big Ten school or an Ivy League university like Harvard, you can't even get your resume in for consideration. Now, that's New York City. That's where the most elite of the elite want to live. And so the competition there is very stiff. But if you've gone to all the trouble to get into Harvard and to graduate from there, why wouldn't you want to leave all of your avenues of networking wide open so that you could actually access the services and the benefits of that degree? You worked hard for it. Why not leave those options on the table? So I'll get to Bethune-Cookman tomorrow. But I have to say, disappointing to see these kids taking this action. Also, have you ever heard of Chris Broussard? He's 1.8 million followers on Twitter. He used to be on ESPN. He's still on television. He's a rock star, superstar. He's on the show tomorrow talking to me about, I guess, whatever we want. So you're going to have to tune in for that. Thank you so much for being here. God bless. Have a fantastic evening. Be with you tomorrow, Lord willing.